It's time for our next session. We have Marcin Szymaniuk, CEO of Tantus Data. He will be presenting the path to effective data migration, overcoming challenges and ensuring success. In this session, Marcin will share key strategies for managing data migration projects, focusing on lessons learned from migrating to public or hybrid cloud environments. He will address critical topics such as accelerating the transition to self-service infrastructure, upskilling teams, ensuring GDPR compliance, and enhancing workflows with MLOps tools. Marcin will also discuss the pitfalls of lift and shift migrations and the challenges of vendor lock-in, providing actionable insights for data leaders seeking to optimize their migration processes. Please welcome Marcin Szymaniuk to the stage.
Thank you very much. Okay. All right. So, hello everyone. Today we will be talking about migrations of data platform, how to make sure it's successful, and how to avoid various pitfalls. We will be talking about aspects like cost, legal aspects, but also people, team, and the processes between them. I'm Marcin, I'm CEO at Tantus Data, and at Tantus Data we help our customers with pretty much everything data related, from setting up an infrastructure through the migration, data engineering, up to machine learning, putting machine learning into production so it actually faces the real customers. And I'll start with a little spoiler. Today, I will be very often asking a question, why? Why are we doing the migration? Because that will be a critical in the success. So the story is that a man walks into the room and he's somewhat angry and he says, "Son, wake up, you have to go to school." And he hears, "But Dad, I don't like school. I don't like the kids, the teachers are mean to me. Give me just one reason why I have to go to the school." And the father says, "Yeah, because you are 45 and you are principal of that school." So when you look under the blanket and when you understand why you are doing something, the perspective is changing. And you might say, "I want to go to the cloud because cloud is cheaper." And there are scenarios where, yeah, you are doing data processing for an hour, you rent a machine for an hour, you pay just for that hour, and that makes sense. But I would say, for most of the scenarios, it wouldn't be the case. For most of the scenarios, the cloud would actually be a bit more expensive, but that might be fine. So how do we justify and what should we take into account when we do the cost calculation? So first of all, so far I was simplifying. I was saying in the cloud or not. The reality is that there is a scale. You can be on your own server, you can rent a machine in the cloud and maintain it. You can be more and more into serverless, cloud native, and so on. And the idea is that the more you're getting there, you hope that it will be easier. It will be easier to maintain, it will be easier to build the features. And usually the cost is growing with that, but you need to ask yourself what you gain from that. How much will be the engineering effort after the migration? How important to me is the faster development which we expect to get from the migration? And even if you answer to those questions, even if you do the calculation, remember that nothing is really written in stone, because you can have your numbers, and then what the actual bill you see is much higher, because everything depends on how exactly you will use the tools, but also, so it's important to understand that it very much will depend on your developers, on your engineers, how they use the tools. So it's important that they get upskilled, that they get training, they get support if they are new to the area, but also which tools they select. Because it's very common that we are getting called by customers and they say, oh, please do cost optimization of that tool, or please do performance tuning of that tool. This is Google Cloud, but the point is, it's every single cloud has a very confusing kind of tool selection. And if you are new to that, you might be confused, so don't expect your developers to know everything. And when you're getting asked to do the optimization, quite often you realize that it's not about optimizing that specific tool. It's very often about wrong tool selection in the first place. And if you are in that situation, it's somewhat similar to trying very hard to improve the speed of the boat, or kind of, I don't know, applying an engine or something like that, because you really want to go to the other side of the river really fast. But if you use the wrong tool, it's like ignoring the fact that there is a bridge next to it. So you can use a much more convenient way of going to the other side of the river. So when you are doing the cost calculation, of course, you have to calculate and you have to have some expectations, but it will be about what you expect, what price you expect to see, what benefits you get from that, but it's also about monitoring from day one. You really need to monitor that, because if something goes not according to your expectations, then it is something you need to address early. And upskilling the team is something you definitely should do early. This is something which will definitely bring you an ROI, and you can. They will learn. The question is like whether they will learn the hard way or not. And one more aspect, which I have not mentioned regarding cost, and which is very often neglected at the early stages, but it's the exit cost. So how expensive will it be to leave a specific solution? How expensive will it be to migrate back? Migrate back because eventually it happens to be too costly, because the solution will be, I don't know, outdated in 5 years and not supported anymore, because of political reasons, because of legal reasons. So you need to ask yourself, how long would it take to migrate back, and how expensive will that be? And it's about asking that questions and understanding the risks. So if you evaluate the risks, then we are in a good position, because we can say, we understand where we are, we make a conscious decision, it's okay. We can do some level of vendor locking. But if you realize, okay, it's not okay, the risk is too large, the cost of migrating back at some point or migrating to something else is too large, then you can decide to invest more into open source, into industry standards. So you use a solution which exists somewhere else, not only at a single cloud vendor. But you can also decide for a hybrid approach from day one. So then you decide for more costly solution now, but you have flexibility to move back and forth. So this is one example of kind of tool selection we did for our telco customer. So those are standard open source tools for data processing. We wrap everything into Kubernetes, which is again open source tool. And by doing that, we have a private cloud, something you can run on your own machines. And the reason the customer wanted such a solution is not really because even the vendor locking. They wanted that solution because they couldn't really go to the public cloud with all their data, so they had to keep the data in the private cloud, but they also wanted to have the flexibility of the the public one. So this platform is being kind of run in parallel, both in AWS and in the private cloud. But the benefit of this kind of approach is that you can also very easily go to GCP, for instance, if you don't like AWS at some point for some reason. Another example of avoiding vendor locking or kind of understanding the vendor locking is a fintech startup of ours. So what they had very heavy data processing, batch processing on top of MS SQL, and the processing was growing while their portfolio was growing. So they were doing all kind of book position calculations on top of their regular transactional database. And at some point they realized it's too expensive and it doesn't scale at all. They wanted a data platform to limit the cost, to enable more advanced data science, to enable ML. So we built a data platform for them on top of the Databricks. And the benefit of that is, first of all, it solves the business problem. Other than that, if at some point they say, we don't like Azure, they can very easily migrate to AWS, to GCP. But at the same time, you have to understand that you remove the vendor locking towards Azure, and there is some level of vendor locking towards Databricks. And it's all about understanding the consequence of each and every decision. So when you are doing the migration, when you're calculating cost, the exit cost is really not something which can be neglected. And it's all about finding the balance between what you pay now and what risk you accept, what you can pay in the future. And if you want to avoid the vendor locking, then probably you want to invest into slightly more expensive and trickier solution now, but you will have the freedom in the future. So far, I was talking a bit about the technology selection, but how exactly do you do that? And again, we are coming back to this question of why, what we want to optimize for. Because maybe you want some simple analytics and bunch of dashboards. Maybe you want to invest more and more into machine learning and AI. Everybody's talking about AI these days. And that will change everything. That will change your users as well. Your users could be very technical data teams because you're providing some insight you sell further, and you are kind of you have very technical team. It might be that the users are business users who knows SQL, and this will be your main tool. But it might be that you have an ambition that everybody who is even not technical is working with data on a daily basis, and the selection will change. But what will not change is the fact that you will have to maintain that, and there are some standard engineering practices which have to happen. It's about building it as an infrastructure, as a code from day one. It's about testing, writing tests, unit tests, integration tests. It's about continuous integration. And if your team is doing that already, then you are in good position. If they are not, then that means you have a problem. And the problem cannot be solved by just saying, okay, guys, from now, you should be doing that. Because the fact they are not doing it, that means they don't understand the benefits. So very likely, you first of all need some upskilling, but I would really recommend you to join, to make sure there is someone in the team who can guide the team through the best practices, but also kind of sell them to the technical team. And if you select the technology, it might be that you make a mistake. And it's very much not about not making them, but it's more about not putting a spin on the reality, accepting them quite early, and also encouraging the team to speak up so you can basically fail fast. That's all you can do in these kind of scenarios. So when you select a technology, make sure you do the goal identification, and once you have the goal in mind, you monitor the situation, you understand whether it's going according to the plan, or that each feature, each pipeline is taking longer and longer and longer, which would be a hint for you that something goes wrong. But your team definitely have to follow the practices, the best practices of software engineering, because yeah, you can say, okay, data platform, migration project, but it is still software. There is no reason not to apply techniques which has been there for decades. One more problem, legal aspects. And this one is slightly different, because now this question, why you are doing that, is not really up to you. Because like when you decide on the cost aspect or a specific technology, you can somewhat find a balance depending on what you want to achieve. But here, you address legal aspects simply because you have to. And you have to be aware of all kind of aspects related to regulations, like, okay, maybe in your country there is a right to be forgotten, so customers' data can be have to be removed when they ask. They can opt in or opt out to the data. It has to be something you identified quite early, but every single team member have to be at least somewhat aware of existence of these kind of issues, that there will be audits eventually. They should understand the difference between anonymization and pseudonymization, and you have to have tools for that. And eventually you might realize that even if you want to go to the cloud, you have to have some part of your infrastructure still on-prem, for instance, because you need to anonymize or pseudo-anonymize the data before you send it to the cloud. And we don't really have time to go through the details of that, but I would be happy to discuss that offline if you're interested. But long story short, legal aspect is something you need to identify very early. You need to make sure the team is aware of those issues, and you need to make sure that the team is not kind of individually solving those issues one by one, and each engineer is coming up with their own solution, because very likely they will not do it right. So very likely you need to build tools for aspects like, for instance, anonymization. There should be one common tool instead of coming up with anonymization technique per pipeline, per project. Okay, and so far I have been talking quite a lot about teams or people in every single aspect, because like when you do cost, it will very much depend on who implements a pipeline and how much it will really cost. When you think about legal aspects, when you're implementing regulation-related aspects, it will very much depend if the person who is implementing that will do that right or not. But I would like to show you just one, because of the time, just one example of the team dynamics you need to pay attention to. Let's say you have an engineer who is like, I don't like Java, I'll use Cloud Function. And next to him, you'll have one which is, but I don't like Python, I'll use Dataflow. And another one is, I don't like Python either, but I'll use BigQuery. So you have 3 different engineers in the same team who would like to go into slightly different directions. And if you don't identify this kind of issue quite early, then I would say you are at risk of having not 1 migration, but 3, not 1 data platform by 3. And it's not better, it's actually much worse, because you would have to maintain 3 data platforms. And in this kind of situation, it's important to identify that early, to make all the decisions, including the technological decisions, based on what team you have and how open they are to upskilling, and how open you are into building larger team and so on. And if they cannot make a democratic decision, then you have to make an executive call and make sure that you have buy-in from the team, that everyone is aware of what architecture we are building. Otherwise, it will be quite messy. So once again, I'm kind of repeating that over and over again, but the team have to get time for learning. The team have to get time to kind of accommodate the new technologies. And if they have never worked with a specific cloud, well, you just have to accommodate that into your estimates, into your planning, and into the next steps. They need to upskilling in terms of technology, but they also need an upskilling in terms of regulations, so they need to be aware of them. If your data engineers and data scientists are sitting in the same room, are not sitting in the same room, they are kind of far away from each other and they don't talk to each other. If you have silos like that, that's also something to pay attention to. If they don't talk to each other, they don't know about each other's problem. So very likely the data scientists are getting blocked over and over again. So make sure you kind of get them closer together. And every now and then you have to make an executive call. Yeah, democracy is nice, but every now and then you have to make a strong decision about the direction. Yeah, so if we sum that up, you can see the number of aspects is quite big, and every of those aspects could be a separate presentation. But yeah, I would be super happy to talk to you about them if you want to kind of go a bit deeper. And for now, I would be happy to answer your questions. So this is my LinkedIn. Let's get connected, and let's chat after the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have time for questions. So, do we have questions?
We have time.
Don't be shy. Yes?
Yeah.
We need a mic.
So, how often have you faced a situation where customer told that this was a bad move and they want to undo this, redo this, or shift the vendor? So how often have you seen that they, or at any stage, they have had second thoughts? Maybe we should not do this.
Okay, I see that quite often at quite early stages. And if you are an early stage of, let's say, we've been running a 3 months of, okay, it's a bit more than a POC if like multiple people are working on that. But okay, we have 1 month POC, and then after 3 months they realize that, then it's kind of perfectly fine. I've seen customers who've been very deep into a specific technology, and they were complaining a lot, and eventually they were moving back. So they did full migration, the full investment into a data platform, and they were moving back. But I would say it is also very often a situation that it very much depends how you implement a specific platform. Because if you are talking, for instance, about high level, about top 3 cloud providers, you can pretty much implement a good working data platform on top of each of them. So very often those complaints are not really, they are about a data platform, but what the root cause is like how that specific data platform was implemented. Not really, it shouldn't be really about the data platform itself, but the implementation. But yeah, I hear that. I hear that every now and then. Sometimes it's an early stage, so then it's an easy to step back. Sometimes you are very committed, and then it's becoming tricky. So that's why the vendor locking part, but also understanding the team, whether the team wants to work with SQL or they want to do programming, for instance, like let's say that they want to do Scala and Spark and this kind of stuff, or they expect that they will be doing SQL. That's critical at early stage. That's critical to identify at early stage.
Okay, we have time for one more question. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for your contribution
Thank
to
you.
this conference. And now it's time for a coffee break.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.